sustainability, conservation, utilisation can all occur at the same time. And in fact, I should sit down right now because I'm ahead. But the problem is, why is it so hard to achieve that balance in fisheries, for God's sake? You talk about, you know, the farming business or the agriculture business or somebody like that, they've got a completely different debate going on. They're not arguing about whether it's sustainable to wipe out all the forests and plant rice. They don't care about that because that happened quite a long time ago. What they're worried about is it's sustainable to maintain an industry and to feed the population in Australia and across the world, as we heard this morning. So there's a bit of a challenge there. Part of the reason, of course, is that fisheries are a public resource. And we happen, as commercial fishermen, to be lucky enough to have access to that resource. And we'd love it to be our own property, as in if you're a farmer, but that's not the case. So that's a start point. And for me, I have what I call a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And my BHAG, as the chair of the Commonwealth Fisheries Association, is to get to a point where we have sustainable wild capture fisheries supported by government, NGOs and the public as being a great thing for Australia. Because at the moment, it's not. At the moment, I think that we've heard enough evidence today of the problems of fisheries, all the bad things that you don't want to know about as a commercial fisherman that seem to end up in the press. So what are those problems? Those problems are a history that we have of poor controls on commercial fisheries. So we definitely had substantial overfishing. In fact, I was quite surprised that some of the slides from Tony didn't show as bad an overfishing in the early years as I perhaps had thought it was. But it is a problem. We need to acknowledge that as an industry and move forward. The enemy within, that's us. That's a problem. The media and lifestyle changes. I'll just break that down for a minute, because the history and the way most people perceive fishermen is pretty much like that. It's like we're out there and we've got a boat full of fish and we're still fishing. And that perception, that ideologue of what a fisherman is, couldn't be further from the truth in the general rule now. However, it's historical. People believe it. There's the enemy within, and I'd like to point out this was released, Russ, and yes, it was caught outside the green zone. That is a top order predator, according to Russ. But the enemy within is ourselves as industry. We are by nature competitive. Kate Brooks, the Savo, earlier explained all the differences. Because we're competitive, we don't tend to learn to work together very well, so it's our fault there. We actually like being thought of as ratbags and vagabonds. I do, anyway. And I know another group of people in the industry that do. We have a sort of a thing of whether, you know, the old salt of the sea and stuff like that. Now, I don't sit on boats very often these days, but I still like to be thought of as a ratbag and vagabond. The problem is, what happens there is it gives the impression that we're unprofessional, and we're not. But I'll tell you what, we actually give the image across that we are, and we've got to change that. Public perception from the media. Thank you very much to the media. You're doing your job well, which is you take the bad news and you report on it really well, and people believe it. And this is a great guy, Tim Winton, right? Done some amazing things for the marine environment, etc. That's a direct quote out of the Weekend Australian. And I think if you ask the public, as what most of them believe, we're not protecting our oceans at all. And we're doing so well on land. The truth is 8.5% of Australia is set aside as a national park, a state park, a World Heritage Area, a reserve, or a privately protected piece of land, okay? 10.3% of our water is set aside just as a marine protected area. You can add to that state parks, fisheries management closures, recreational no-take zones, etc. Already, we are way in excess of park requirements and park desires worldwide. So what the hell is the problem? I mean, why can't we, as an industry, get any traction when we're sitting there saying, but we're not as bad as you think we are? because where there's smoke, and sorry about the slide, I realise that's hard to see, but where there's smoke, there's always a bit of fire. And the fire in this case is that globally, fisheries protection or MPA protection, which are two different things, is actually pretty poor. You know, globally, 1.17% of the global ocean surface is set aside as a marine protected area. Right, now remember, in Australia we've got 10.3 at least, and we're going to have an awful lot more shortly. But there are only 12 of 190 states in the UN that have actually got more than 10%. Australia, interesting enough, is second in the world, and who to? Germany, for God's sake. I don't know why, but there you go. And the reality, I think Tony mentioned this morning, we catch 0.002% of the fish stocks in the world, and we have something like, it's not quite 20% of the entire world's marine protected areas in our zone. So even though it's easy to blame the media and say, it's your fault, you're not publishing it, you're not doing the right thing, the problem is we have a message that's out there and we have to deal with it. We've got a lifestyle shift. Bill is obviously part of it. I am actually part of it. I moved to Hobart, apart from getting married down there, I moved there really for the fishing. I go trout fishing and the relaxation and so on. Society's values change. This shot is it's a salmon river. It's actually called the Kenai, where the people literally line along the shores for as far as you can see, shoulder to shoulder, and they just cast a line in and catch salmon and catch salmon and catch salmon. And there's no commercial fishing for it anymore, but it's a lifestyle set-aside thing. The same sort of issues are happening in Australia, where more coastal development, that brings with it other problems, of course, pollution, runoff, la la la, as Russ mentioned, but it does also mean that society actually value fish a bit more. And that, again, should be a good thing for us in the industry. We should actually try and work out a way to turn that into a plus. I've got to put those glasses away. I feel like Albert Einstein or something. So there's some solutions we need to look at. The first one is an industry responsibility. We have a genuine need as industry to get our act together. It's really easy to sit there and say, please give us some money, help us out, etc., etc. But in the first instance, we have a sort of a market failure in the industry where we can't get enough of the industry together in a cohesive, unified group to actually present the case that needs to be presented. So that's people like me, our role. We are got to work on that and got to work on it quickly.